Bowman Gray Stadium will host a clash once again in 2026, and the future Chicago street course on the NASCAR schedule for 2026 is uncertain. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Shane Van Gisbergen's 2025 quad lock scheme that we'll see in the Xfinity Series race tomorrow. This scheme looks really awesome, in my opinion. I think it's better than last year's quad lock scheme, and honestly, the colors look really, really solid. I love the colors. They look great. I think Junior Motorsports knocked this one out of the park. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Sonoma. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brad Perez's 2025 Palo Casino scheme that we'll see in the Xfinity Series race tomorrow. I love the look of this car. It's one of my favorite Alpha Prime racing schemes I've seen so far this year. I like the white. I like the pink contrast. It looks really good. I love the look of it. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Alex Abay's 2025 Sonoma Aviation scheme that we'll see in the Xfinity Series race at Sonoma. Car looks alright in my opinion. I think the colors do look decent as I see them get a new sponsor for the SS Greenlight Racing team. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2025 Brent Grape scheme that we'll see this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. I really like the look of this car, honestly. I like the different look of it. It does look alright. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Sonoma. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Hunter Nemechek's 2025 Mobile 1 scheme that we'll see in 3 NASCAR Cup Series races, including, I believe, this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. I really like the Mobile 1 cars that we've been seeing in recent years. This one's no exception. It kind of looks like the Xfinity number 20 car we've seen in the past. It does look good. Love the look of this car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cole Custer's 2025 Autodesk scheme that we'll see this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of this car. I really don't like the yellow tint they've got on it. I don't really like some of the things on it. I like the black number, don't get me wrong, but outside of that, there's a lot of things that are a little bit mismatched with this. Not the biggest fan of this scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Zane Smith's 2025 Michael Roberts construction scheme that we'll see this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. I actually like this car quite a bit. The colors do look solid on it. I love the different look of it. It does look good. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Sieg's 2025 Lynch scheme that we'll see this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. Honestly, car looks meh in my opinion. I don't really like the look of it too much. I think RSS has had some good looking schemes this year, but this one is a little bit of a letdown for me. I don't love the colors. It's not that great. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2025 Lido scheme that we'll see this next weekend at Dover Motor Speedway. This car may be uncharted, but I gotta say this car actually looks really good. It's one of the better 2021 racing paint schemes I've seen so far this year. I like the black background to it. It does look pretty good. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack next weekend at Dover. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeb Burton's 2025 BG product scheme that we'll see this weekend at Sonoma. Car looks alright in my opinion. I do like the yellow. I do like some of the other stuff on the car, but it's not perfect, but it does look alright. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Blaine Perkins' 2025 Warrior Health Foundation scheme that we'll see this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. Car looks alright in my opinion. It's nice to see them have a new sponsor. Jordan Anderson Racing does have some new sponsor this weekend, which is really, really exciting. I think the car does look okay. It looks alright. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Herz. As it was announced, I believe, on Tuesday that Herz will sponsor John Hunter Nemechek next weekend in the NASCAR Cup Series race at Dover Motor Speedway. They also revealed the paint scheme for the car as well. I gotta say, this is a really, really big deal to see Herz come on. Herz is part of Knighthead Capital Fund, I believe, which Tom Brady is also an investor in the Herz brand. So maybe we'll see Tom Brady get involved in the ownership group in some way, shape, or form of legacy. I remember the rumors that Tom Brady and Jimmy Johnson were going to have an Indy car with Chip Ganassi being part of that as well. Obviously, that, of course, did not end up happening this year, but this is still a really big deal to bring Herz in. This is going to be the first time the Herz has sponsored a NASCAR Cup Series car since Herz sponsored William Byron, I believe, back in 2019 and 2020. Again, I think the car looks really, really solid. I think it does look good, and I think it's pretty exciting to see that they will be having that car once again. It looks good, and it's nice to see that Herz will be sponsoring this next weekend in the NASCAR Cup race at Dover Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Marty Smith. As it was announced on Monday afternoon that Marty Smith was officially been named the Grand Marshal for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race tomorrow at Sonoma, the Pit Box Food Mass 150. Marty Smith, of course, has been a long time in the sport for many years. He worked on NASCAR's ESPN coverage from 2007, I believe, up until the end of 2014. And he still has been with ESPN for a very long time, but he's the only really last remnant that is still from ESPN that does have some association with NASCAR, though he's also still very focused on the college football side of things currently at the moment. I remember there were rumors and speculation he was going to be part of Amazon this year with their coverage. Of course, that did not end up happening for this year. But I will say this about Marty Smith. I think he's going to do a really good job. He was trying to get crowdfunding and trying to get help from people to say, how should I do this? Will I do a really good job? Who knows at this point? I think Marty Smith will probably actually give a really good command. So it's exciting to see him get the chance and opportunity, and pretty cool that he'll be the one that will get the opportunity to give the command for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Sonoma. Really exciting and really great stuff, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, we do have a couple Shane Van Gisbergen stories to talk about on the channel. The first one was reported by Adam Stern. According to him, Shane Van Gisbergen and Scott Dixon were on the front page of the New Zealand Herald, which of course both drivers picking up the win this weekend. Remember, Scott Dixon won the IndyCar race in Mid-Ohio, his first win in basically over a year since Detroit. And of course, Shane Van Gisbergen won his second race of 2025 in his third career NASCAR Cup Series win. And both were able to get wins and victories. I think getting on the New Zealand Herald is a really, really big deal considering both are from New Zealand and both been two of the most successful motorsports drivers from that country. And I think it is exciting to see that they got the chance and opportunity to be on that Herald. It's really good to see that they got the chance and opportunity to be on the New Zealand Herald. Pretty exciting stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen once again. Now, on Monday, there were some very interesting statistics that came out in regards to Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, had picked up his third career NASCAR Cup Series win on Sunday at the Chicago Street Course in 33 starts. That is the fastest for a single driver in NASCAR Cup competition since Jimmy Johnson did it as a rookie all the way back in 2002. He is also the first driver to win multiple races as a rookie in a season since Denny Hamlin did it back in 2006 when he swept both Pocono races. And he's also the fastest to do it and the first to have 3 wins in the first season since Tony Stewart did it back in 1999 when he won 3 races as a rookie. I think it's very realistic to think at this point that Shane Van Gisbergen is probably going to either tie or break the record by the end of this year. Shane Van Gisbergen has been so good this year, especially on the road courses, and he's already the odds-on favorite to win both the Xfinity race and the NASCAR Cup Series race this weekend. I will say, though, he is going to have a lot of competition. I think the field will actually be a little more closer this time around, though I think he'll be really good considering he dominated the Xfinity Series race at Sonoma last year, and he had that really incredible burnout in the Xfinity race. So I'm very excited to see what SVG can do this weekend. He'll be looking to go back-to-back and pick up his third win of the year, which he actually would tie Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, and Christopher Bell for the most wins so far this year if he can get it done. But I would not be surprised if he wins the next 2 road course races and breaks the record for the most wins as a rookie in many years. But I think he continues to do a lot of impressive and really good things in this sport. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Tomasi. As it was announced on Tuesday morning that Tyler Tomasi will be driving the number 69 for MBM Motorsports in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series near the end of the season at Talladega Superspeedway. Tyler Tomasi has already made 1 start in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series earlier this year at Pocono Raceway. They were able to make the field, but unfortunately that truck was really off the pace and didn't show some pace and speed. This team is expected to make more starts throughout the 2025 season. I also think there's a very good chance and possibility that you're going to see this program as a full-time organization in 2026, perhaps a Tyler Tomasi game behind the wheel of that truck. But I think there's a really good opportunity for him nonetheless to drive a Talladega Superspeedway because I think despite the fact that their truck's probably not going to be the fastest, the drafting tracks are an equalizer for all the drivers in the field that get that chance and opportunity. So I really hope Tyler can do a really good job. I actually think he will be very fast and very, very competitive. And I think this is nonetheless a great opportunity for Tyler. I think he will be good in that truck probably. I think Tyler's a very underrated talent. He can do the best in equipment from time to time. I'm excited to see what he can do, and we'll we'll see how Tyler Tomasi can do with MBM Motorsports in a couple weeks from now, or by the end of the season at Talladega. Looking forward to see what he can do in that same car. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Slinger Nationals. Now on Tuesday night, the Slinger Nationals took place and the race was absolutely wild and crazy. Bubba Pollard got taken out of contention, basically got involved in a wreck and an incident, I believe, in the event. And really the race came down to a couple guys. It was between Tai Majeski and Johnny Sauter throughout the race. But as expected, Tai Majeski, who's been one of the best guys in Slinger Nationals history, who I believe has won 2 or 3 Slinger Nationals in the past, he would come out the final corner and pick up another Slinger Nationals win in very dominating fashion. Tai Majeski, while this year has been a little bit of struggle for the ThorSport Racing Organization in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, we know that Tai can do really good when he gets behind a wheel of equipment in the sport. And I think that Tai Majeski is one of the most talented drivers in NASCAR today, at least in the lower series, considering he did win the championship last year in 2024 in the Truck Series, and he's one of the most talented short track racers we have in the country currently at the moment. So when you see Tai Majeski get that chance and opportunity to go and race that, you do expect that he is going to be very fast and competitive, which he certainly was. Congratulations to him on picking up a well-deserved Slinger Nationals win. He absolutely earned that win. He did a fantastic and really, really good job. And again, congratulations to him on going out there and picking up a well-earned win and a well-earned victory in the event. Good to see him win the Slinger Nationals this year. Congratulations to him on getting it done. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kevin Harvick. As it was announced yesterday, or a couple days ago, that Kevin Harvick will be competing in the PLM race in the Cars Late Model Tour this Saturday at Hickory Motor Speedway. He will drive the number 29 car for, I believe, the Rackley/Kevin Harvick Incorporated team, and he will have HendrickCars.com as a sponsor. This is really significant for one big reason. Keelan Harvick getting the HendrickCars.com sponsorship, which could mean down the road that Keelan Harvick, considering that Kevin has driven the number 5 car in a practice session when Kyle Larson was attempting to run the 2024 Indy 500, I think down the road you're going to see Keelan Harvick become a Hendrick development driver for this team. Because if you're getting HendrickCars.com sponsorship every single time you race or every other time you race, you're probably part of the family in some way, shape, or form. Though Keelan probably also down the road have an opportunity to work with the Trackhouse Racing brand, considering he is pretty close to some of the Trackhouse Racing people over there currently at this moment right now. But nonetheless, I think it's pretty cool that Kevin's going to be back racing once again. Kevin was really competitive racing against his son. I think his son, Keelan, is also racing as well, who just turned, I believe, 13 years old, I'm pretty sure, recently. And Keelan has been very, very talented and everything he's got behind him. Well, yes, he's probably had the best equipment to help him. When you get the best equipment, you got to do the best you can, and he's certainly taken that challenge and done a really awesome and really good job behind the wheel. So I think he is going to be very, very strong in that car, and I'm excited to see what Keelan can do this weekend when we do get there as well. But exciting for Kevin to be back racing in the Cars Tour once again. I think he'll do a really awesome, and I think he will do a pretty good job behind the wheel of that car, and I think it's going to be fun to see Kevin Harvick have that chance and opportunity to win another Cars Tour event. When we see legends like Kevin get the opportunity to do it, he usually does a really good job, so excited nonetheless to see that he will likely be back behind the wheel. He will be behind the wheel. Excited to see what he can do this weekend at Hickory Motor Speedway in the PLM race. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Greg Van Alst. As it was announced on Monday morning that Greg Van Alst has officially formed a new NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series team called Greg Van Alst Motorsports. He is backed away from racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series currently at the moment and is going to drive the number 35 truck. The first race they will run will be Indianapolis Raceway Park, and they're going to make 4 starts as an organization in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year. I believe Mike Shannon, I believe that's who the name I saw, will be the crew chief for this car for those 4 races as well. Now, I do not believe that Greg Van Alst has any owner's points going into this, so he will have to qualify his way in. Greg Van Alst, we all know, is known for winning that race at Daytona back in 2023 and did it in a very emotional fashion. One of the best ARCA Daytona races I think we have seen in recent memory, where he had a lot of underdogs like Jason White and other guys going up there. And since that point, it has really given Greg Van Alst an opportunity to try his shot in NASCAR. but it really hasn't worked out for him so far in the few years he's been racing in the sport. So I think he's resetting and trying to figure out what he's going to do with his career. And I totally respect this. I want to see Greg Van Alst do a really good job in NASCAR. It's really good when people like him, who've been trying it for many years, can get into good equipment, which again, this is probably not going to be the fastest equipment, let's be real and honest. But I really would love to see Greg Van Alst get into top level equipment and see what he can do. But for now, I think starting like this is the right direction to go because I want to see him have a lot of success and do good things. Unfortunately, like I said, it's just been a struggle to really get up to speed and up to par and do as good as he can. But I love seeing new teams in the sport. It's more competition for the Trux series as well. We're going to talk about the purses later this week because the more trucks you have, the more higher those purses are going to be. And there's a lot of unknowns about whether the composite bodies are going to come in, like mentioned by Dale Jr. But we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens on that front. Nonetheless, excited to see a new team in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Hope he can do a really good job and show some really good speed in these 4 races that he's going to run, including at IRP in a couple weeks from now. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Will Rogers. As it was announced on Monday that Will Rogers will be driving the number 70 for Cope Race Family Racing Organization this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. Now, Will Rogers is someone who is a renowned road course racer who has won road course races in the ARCA West Series. And what's really cool about the story is Will Rogers, of course, is one of Eric Jones' spotters. So Will Rogers will have Eric Jones as a spotter for this event at Sonoma Raceway. Now, a lot of people are going to be wondering, where's Thomas Annunziata? I thought he was supposed to drive this car this weekend. Well, Thomas Annunziata is going to be running a Trans Am race. I can't remember exactly where he's going to be racing it at, but he's running a Trans Am race this weekend, which, of course, he is competing for the championship in the TA2 series currently at the moment. So they're bringing someone in who does have a lot of experience racing in cars. Will also does have some experience racing Xfinity series on road courses as well. I think that Will Rogers may be an underdog pick for a potential opportunity to maybe get a top 15 or a top 20. I think the Cope Racing family cars have shown some good speed this year. They've not been absolutely amazing by the stretch of imagination, but they're also a new team in this sport, so it's going to take time for them to really get up to speed and up to par to be a top-level team and organization. But I got to say, it is exciting to see a new driver get an opportunity, who in my opinion has deserved an opportunity for many years, because I think he is one of the most underrated talents in this sport. I think he's really, really good. Again, he can get the best out of equipment. He can put up some really solid and really strong numbers, and I think he'll be very good and someone to watch out for this weekend. I think he's going to be one you're going to have to keep your eyes out on for sure, because I've seen Will Rogers get by the wheel of Eagles and do really strong and put up some really good numbers and really good speed. So excited to see what he can do. We'll see how he performs this weekend, and we look to see him try to do the best he can. I do think he'll be pretty competitive. I think he'll be fast, and I think he'll be a good underdog pick for a lot of people this weekend in the Xfinity Series event. Glad to see him get the chance and opportunity. We expect Leland and Thomas to take majority of the rest of the races throughout the remainder of the year, but maybe down the road, if they have to go do more commitments throughout the rest of the season, maybe we see Will Rogers get the chance and opportunity again. Who knows at this point? Nonetheless, a really exciting and great opportunity for Will Rogers this weekend in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Sonoma Raceway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about TNT. Now, many of you watch the NASCAR Cup Series broadcast at Sonoma Raceway. We're going to talk about the ratings here in just a short little bit. But we have seen a lot of people that are very critical of the TNT broadcast from this past weekend at the Chicago Street Course. And even people like myself were comparing it, and I think Eric Eastep compared this as well, to the Fox broadcasts that we've seen over the recent years. And when your broadcast is being compared to the Fox broadcast, that is not a good look for you. Now, Dale Jr., unlike Fox executives, actually came out and addressed a lot of the criticism that they have seen. He basically did reveal they had a new crew on. This is not a NASCAR Productions crew that they have currently at the moment. This is a new crew that we brought on, and we have a lot of new guys coming in and a new producer who is coming in. Dale Jr. also did say that they thought that it was unacceptable what happened, and they're working to try to fix the details going forward, and they are going to continue trying to improve as a broadcast crew going forward. First of all, I want to give credit to Dale Jr. for coming out and publicly saying that they do have things they do need to work on and that they are going to address it, which is great. At least they are addressing a lot of the criticism that they have seen. Because again, I think that broadcast on Sunday was not what a lot of us expected. The camera shots were not really good. We missed a lot of moments. I mean, during Shane Van Gisbergen's burnout, for example, they went to a side-by-side commercial. That's like what Fox did for a long time, where they would go side-by-side when someone was doing a burnout. And Elise Dale Jr. is coming out and saying that we need to fix these problems. And I think we all were very critical, because I don't think all of us expected, coming this year, we all kind of didn't expect that TNT's broadcasts were going to be on the level of Amazon. Amazon Prime's broadcasts were next level quality. They were absolutely amazing and really, really fun to watch. I don't think the TNT broadcasts were that good. I think that Atlanta was all right. I think Atlanta was okay. It wasn't great by any stretch of imagination, but I don't think Atlanta was too bad. But this one was just not good, in my opinion. There was a lot of major mistakes, a lot of mishandling throughout the broadcast, and there was just a lot of things they missed. And again, they had like a remote. I think they had like a remote group out there that had their own thing that was away from the track a little bit, which I think that plays a little bit of a part as well. But I do think that you have to address these criticisms and get better. That's what I'm hoping at this point, because I want to see them get better with their coverage, because they've only got 5 races. They've been to Sonoma before, one of the few tracks they've been to, because they only cover a few races back then, but they've been to Sonoma many times before, so they should have a little bit of history. They should be able to go back and look in the archives and figure out how to run the broadcast there. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if TNT get these broadcast situations figured out going forward. But to me, I think it's good that Dale Jr. at least addressing the criticism that they've seen, because I think that the criticism is they try to be constructive, and I hope they can fix some of the broadcast issues they've had, and hopefully they get those fixed going forward into the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ryan Truex. As it was announced on Tuesday morning that Ryan Truex will drive the number 24 for Sam Hunt Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next weekend at Dover Motor Speedway. Ryan Truex comes in as the defending winner of the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Sonoma Raceway when he drove the number 20 car to victory lane. He had to hold off a hard-charging Carson Quaffle, who of course was part-time at the time, who will be coming in as the weekend as one of the favorites to pick up the victory in that event. Ryan Truex, though, historically is very good at Dover. 2 of his 3 career NASCAR Xfinity Series wins have come at Dover Motor Speedway. And I do expect that Ryan Truex is going to be very strong and competitive. Though I will say you compare the Sam Hunt Racing equipment and compare that to the Joe Gibbs Racing equipment, and I think that equipment is not as strong. So he will have a little bit more of a challenge going into that event. But I do think that he will do the best he can to go out there and try to pick up the win and the victory. Because I think that this historically is a great track for the Truexes. I mean, Martin Truex Jr. picked up like 4 Cup Series wins at the track. One back in 2007, won it there in 2019, picked up a win in 2023. I think he got another win in 2016 also, if I'm not mistaken. So historically, the Truex family has been very, very strong at the track. Now, what are my realistic expectations in this race? I think he will score top 10. I think that car has been really solid this year when they've had Cup guys behind the wheel. Kurt Bell's been really good in that car. Corey Hyde's been really good this year. And they've had a lot of really strong runs so far this year in 2025. So we'll see how that car ends up doing. But it's just so awesome to see him get that chance and opportunity to race once again. He's very good. He's very, very talented in my opinion. He deserves another shot and opportunity in top level equipment. And again, I wish he wasn't a Joe Gibbs race car. He should be in that 18 car over William Sawalich personally. I think he's way better than William Sawalich. But we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens on that front. Nonetheless, a great opportunity for Ryan, and good to see he'll get the chance and opportunity to race for Sam Hunt Racing next weekend at Dover Motor Speedway. I think he'll be strong and pretty good. We'll see how he ends up doing. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Will Brown. As was reported and put out by the Supercars page, I believe it was on Tuesday or Monday, that apparently Will Brown spoke about this after the NASCAR Cup Series race and talked about this during a press conference as well that he had, I think, for the press pass, I'm pretty sure, this week. He says he wants to see a Supercars NASCAR crossover in the future, where NASCAR drivers get the opportunity to race in some Supercar races in the future in like an own event, while some of these guys from Supercars continue to get the chance and opportunity to come over and race in NASCAR. Now, we all know that the current next-gen car, a lot of that was based on the Gen 3 Supercar that was released as Supercars continues to race at this particular moment. And we, of course, have seen Shane Van Gisbergen come over from Australia and New Zealand and come over and be pretty successful in the NASCAR Cup Series with 3 wins in the NASCAR Cup Series and 4 wins in the Xfinity Series currently at the moment. And that could change by the end of this weekend. But we have seen a lot of guys from the supercar world come over and race in sport. Jack Perkins, for example, who won a race in supercars and has been very competitive and was pretty competitive in the event in Chicago, but he got taken out early in the race, and it was probably likely going to contend for a top 5, maybe even a top 3 at that point, if not taken out by Sammy Smith. But Will Brown has come over and raced in NASCAR. And I think about other guys like Brock Feeney, who was rumored to race this year. I don't know if that deal has fallen through at this point. And we've seen Cam Waters make a start or 2 in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year. Made a couple starts in the Cup and Truck Series throughout the last couple of years. And then I remember Brody Kosecki making that start at Indianapolis in 2023. But we've also seen rumors of drivers in NASCAR rumored to go over race in supercars. I remember there was a lot of talk that Kyle Busch was going to run in that. I think it was the Adelaide final, I'm pretty sure he was going to run, but that deal unfortunately fell through. And Kyle Larson was very, very close to running for the new Top Chevrolet team that I believe Roland Dane is going to be managing at this point. But they were very close to signing the deal, and that announcement was supposed to happen like a couple weeks back. And that deal fell through about a month or so ago after what happened at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And since then, Larson has not been as strong of a driver in recent years. But I think a crossover is something that the sport desperately needs. And I think it'll be really, really huge. Because you look at the audiences, for example, especially my audience. When I talk about Shane Van Gisbergen on this channel, my viewership goes up quite a bit. It's some of my most viewed videos is when I make conversation around Shane Van Gisbergen and we talk about him, or other Australian drivers like a Will Brown, for example, making starts, for Cam Waters making starts, or Jack Perkins making starts. There is a major crossover happening in the sport right now, and I think we need to see more of that going forward into the future. So I really love it. There's talk about it and conversation around it. I think that if it could happen, it'd be really something that could be really good for the sport in general. So I think a Supercars NASCAR crossover is something that's probably going to be in the works in the future, and I really hope they do have something like that going forward, not too far down the road. It'd be really exciting and really great to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaylee Bryson. Now, I did a video on this story on Monday, but it was announced on Monday that Kaylee Bryson will make her ARCA/NASCAR debut later today in the ARCA race in the number 17 car for Cook Racing Technologies later this afternoon and this evening at Sonoma Raceway. Now, Kaylee Bryson, for those who don't know, has competed in the Chili Bowl Nationals multiple times in the A main. She's made it 2 or 3 times in the A main. I think she's won a couple B mains in her career, and she's made it to the A main multiple different times. She also won the Trans Am Championship, I believe, last year in one of the Trans Am Championships, I think the TA2 series, if I'm not mistaken, and has picked up multiple wins in that series as well, and I believe is still competing in the Trans Am series currently at this particular moment in point. Now, Cook Racing Technologies, when we talk about that program, they're currently running, I believe, in the NASCAR Truck Series at the moment with Patrick Staropoli, and they made starts last year and were in association to really help Marco Andretti. That deal, of course, unfortunately kind of didn't work out too well. Marco really kind of struggled in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series last year, and outside of running the Indy 500, we really haven't seen much of Marco Andretti since. But for Kaylee Bryson, this is an amazing opportunity. I think of the female drivers coming up through motorsports currently at the moment, I think that Kaylee Bryson is someone who has got a lot of potential to really be successful in motorsports across the board. She's won in pretty much everything she's gotten behind the wheel of, and I think she was very competitive in her LMSC, which is late model stock car, by the way. She's been pretty competitive in that as well when she has ran. Now, realistically, there are going to be some guys from the upper series that are running. Christian Eck, as I saw, will be running later today. I believe I did see William Sawalch is running this event. Jack Wood is running this race, if I'm not mistaken. A couple other guys from the upper series are coming down and racing in this event. So realistically, her goal is to, 1, complete as many laps as possible. And number 2, if you go out there and win this race, I'd be super, super impressed, because then I think a lot of teams would really take notice on that front. Now, could she potentially be full-time in ARCA West next year? It is certainly possible, but I think she'd love to probably be full-time in like the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series. But I also don't want to see her rush up completely if she does try to pursue this. I don't want to see her do the same thing that Tony Breitninger did and see what Hailie Deegan did, because Hailie Deegan, she had a lot of potential. She won, of course, a couple ARCA West races in 2018 and 19. And then, of course, it really never worked out for her in her favor. Now she's struggling Indy next currently at this moment right now. But for Kaylee Bryson, I think this is an unbelievable opportunity for her. I think she's got a great opportunity to be strong and really competitive with this team. I'm excited to see what she can do. Again, she's going to be in some really good equipment. If it can be reliable, I think she's got a shot to win. I think Tyler Rice's been driving for the team. He's been pretty good with this organization this year as well. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see if Kaylee Bryson can do a really good job and show some good stuff. But excited to see her get the chance and opportunity to make her ARCA debut this weekend at Sonoma, and I think she'll probably do a really good job later today in the ARCA West race at Sonoma Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cody Ware. Now, one of the biggest controversies from the NASCAR Cup Series race at Chicago was the crash with Cody Ware. It was one of the hardest hits, according to what was put out there. That was one of the hardest wrecks we have seen in NASCAR Cup history, as Cody Ware basically lost, I believe, a brake rotor going down the long straightaway in turn number 6, and he slammed really, really hard into the tire barriers. Now, early in the week, Bowman kind of talked about it. NASCAR apparently did a little bit of a test on it, and he basically said that they got that call absolutely wrong. They talked about this as well. NASCAR is planning to address a lot of these situations going forward and fix a lot of problems. And Brad Moran, of course, went on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio to kind of clear the air on the situation, and they said they didn't really have a camera down there to really see everything at that particular moment, which I kind of find hard to believe considering there was a camera down there, I believe, on turn number 6. Apparently it was not a moving camera, so they really couldn't see it from their vantage point, but they basically had a camera down there that really wasn't working at that point. Now, Cody Ware also came on and talked about this, I believe it was yesterday if I'm not mistaken, and talked about how hard the hit was. He said the hit was so hard that he cracked, I believe, the foam inside of his helmet, and the Hans device also got cracked as well. I have not heard of the Hans device cracking in a very, very long time. And the foam inside the helmet cracking, I haven't seen that in many, many years. Now, especially after this situation, what happened here was unacceptable that NASCAR did not throw the caution. Look, I think that they're not ever going to come out and admit it, and NASCAR never said it even during, I believe, the Holler Talk podcast, if I'm not mistaken, but they basically said that they didn't blame the rain for the reason for not throwing the caution. I do believe that one of the reasons they did not throw the caution was because of the impeding weather coming in. I don't think that's an excuse, personally. I think that they should still be throwing caution. Safety needs to be the number one priority at this point, and the fact they took safety away and kept it green for 35 seconds. I think it was Jeff Gluck timed it. I think he said it was about 35 seconds altogether. That should have been half the time. I mean, with the Leland Honeyman caution, it was less than 30 seconds. It was like 15 or 20 seconds, and they threw the caution and went to an overtime finish. Now, again, the weather was playing a factor at that point, but it still is not an excuse for having a car go into the tire barriers and completely crash the car and completely destroy the car at that point. I just think that NASCAR really needs to get it together because we've been seeing more officiating blunders in recent years, and they have got to get this under control. They need to get people up there. Ever since David Hoots retired in 2019, we have seen more of these officiating issues, and there were definitely some officiating issues when David Hoots was running the sport as the official, but you have seen more than when David Hoots was running the sport. I just think that this is inexcusable, especially with how bad his hit was. Now, for those wondering about Cody Ware is cleared to run this weekend, so if you're wondering about him, he will be good to go, whether you like him or not. I don't think a driver should be getting seriously hurt at this point. Good to see he'll be back this weekend. He's been cleared to run this weekend at, I believe we're racing at Sonoma, so he should be okay for that. Probably will have a backup driver just in case, though, if something like that happens. Probably someone from the Xfinity Series, like a Charlotte creator, Sam Mayer, or maybe Harrison Burton. They might give the call if Cody can't make it through the whole entire event. But nonetheless, I think it's good that they at least address it, and they need to clear up that kind of stuff going forward. I think what happened there was unacceptable if you ask me. I think there's a lot of things they definitely need to work on for sure, and I really hope they do come in and address some of these issues and some of the criticism they have been receiving in regards to some of those issues, and I hope they can figure that out going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course TV ratings. And honestly, they're not very good. As it was reported by Adam Stern, I believe it was on Tuesday going into Wednesday, that TNT and True TV got 2.1 million viewers for Chicago. It was on cable, of course, this year, but down from 3.9 million in 2024 and down from 4.3 to 4.4 million in 2023. Obviously, it should not be shocking and surprising that the numbers are down, compared to last year, right? Number one, when you put a race on cable, those numbers are not going to be as strong. Because again, if this race on national television, like let's say like CBS or Fox, for example, though Fox would have done a worse job in TNT, and even like NBC, for example, this race probably still gets around 3.5 to 3.4. And also, earlier start times probably did play a little bit of effect on it because when you start these races a little bit later, you do, I believe, get a little bit higher of viewership. So that's something to kind of look at as well on that front. But that number is still not very good, but it is a cable race. And road course races in general, I will say, don't get as high of viewership for those races compared to, and even short tracks sometimes can get bigger numbers in some of the road course races, so keep in mind. So it is disappointing to see that only 2.1 million people were able to tune into the event this year. But I will say, it is still a solid number, all things considered, for a race that was on cable this year. And I think some people also just have kind of gotten burned out with the Chicago street course in general. So that's also something to kind of look at on that front as well. To me, though, I really love the Chicago street course. I think the event was all right this year. I think also some people saw how bad the coverage was for TNT this year, which, again, we talk about Dale Jr. addressing some of the criticism that kind of came out from it. And I think that there's things that he definitely can work on there. But I think the ratings are okay. They're not good by any stretch of the imagination. I think if this race again was on a national network, this race probably gets over 3 million viewers at that particular point. But I think there's some things that probably would also happen at that moment as well. So we'll see what happens going forward in the future with the rating side of things. I do think Sonoma, there's going to be a little bit of struggle on that. I would not be surprised if Sonoma does have a lower rating this time around on the Cup side. Now the Xfinity side, which we're going to talk about later today, that number I actually think will be higher for the event because the Chicago Xfinity ratings were actually really good, and he had a lot of big names running that event as well. So nonetheless, ratings definitely could be worse. They absolutely could be better for sure, but they're not the worst ratings I have seen. Hopefully they do end up getting better, though, into the future, in my honest opinion. I wish they were higher, but they're not the worst I've ever seen overall. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Circuit of the Americas. Now, there's been no official announcement in regards to the future Circuit Americas at this moment, but there was a tweet that went out, I believe it was on Tuesday morning, and it looks like renewal tickets are finally starting to go out for Circuit of the Americas. This is a pretty big indication that more than likely that Circuit of the Americas will be returning to the NASCAR Cup Series schedule and Xfinity schedule more than likely in 2026. Of course, currently at the moment, Coda only has a contract for 2025, and they really go on by a year-by-year basis. I think only had a 1 or 2 year deal. Then I believe they extended it for the 2025 year, and now they're trying to return in 2026. Now, after how successful I think this race was, not just for the Xfinity Series event, which I thought was a really great race, but after how good Circuit Americas was, I think maybe the best next-gen road course race we have ever seen with how amazing of a battle this was. I think especially since they went to the short course this year on the NASCAR front, I think Circuit Americas has earned the right and opportunity to stay on the schedule. Plus, I think another reason why Coda deserves to be on a schedule for another year is because it's part of a rising market. The Austin, Texas, and that market out in that area is one of the rising markets currently at the moment for NASCAR. And when you go to Texas, for example, those numbers generally are really strong and really, really good. And again, the racing, I think, has been very, very good. Now, obviously, I think there's some road course procedures that NASCAR can work on, but I think that the Coda racing actually was better on the short course and even the long course at this point for the NASCAR front. Though I really did like the long course, don't get me wrong, I think the short course actually put on a much better racing product and a much better show when it came to the racing. As for Coda coming back, I think it's well earned, and I think it does deserve another year on the schedule. We are going to be talking about the amount of road courses with Brad Keselowski's comments later, but I will say I don't entirely agree with Brad Keselowski's comments, by the way. But I will say with Coda, I think that it coming back in 2036, got it 10 years from now, 2026, that is absolutely well earned in my opinion. I think Coda, again, is just a really good market. Generally, the crowds are not as big as like the Formula One crowds, right? But we don't expect to have Formula One sized crowds for a Cup Series race at a track that can hold over 100 to 150,000 people, seems like every time Formula One goes there. They could probably hold around 100, 150K. But NASCAR generally gets about 50 to 60,000 fans, which for a race at a road course, that's still really good. I mean, if they had those numbers at Watkins Glen, for example, they'd be pretty happy with those numbers. Or like a Gateway, for example, they'd be pretty happy with those numbers, considering I believe the Gateway has around 60,000 seats there, and they usually have about 100,000 people that show up at that point. But for COTA, it is a really, really good road course. It does put on generally a really solid and really, really good product for all the series that do go there. I think Formula One also does put on a good show there from time to time as well. But I really love Circuit of the Americas. It's a really fun track. It's a really, really fun facility. And I think it's just very exciting to see that it looks like they will be coming back onto the NASCAR Cup Series schedule and Xfinity schedule next year. Now, the Truck Series, they did not run there this year. It's unknown what the Truck Series schedule is going to look like for 2026. There's been some rumors about maybe some short tracks returning. There's been rumors about other things with that schedule at that point. The unknowns if Lime Rock's going to come back on the truck schedule. They do want to come back next year to Lime Rock, but I replace Lime Rock with a COTA race any given day if we're going to have a truck series there, though I will say the road course racing for trucks has not been as strong or been good for that series. Nonetheless, it's good to see, and I think it's pretty cool that COTA will be returning to the NASCAR schedule most likely next year and next season. I think that's exciting, and I think that's really fun thing to look at overall. Pretty cool. It looks like that Circuit Americas will be returning to the NASCAR schedule once again in 2026. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about penalties from this past weekend. As Bob Pockrass did report and confirm, there will be no penalties coming out from the NASCAR Cup or Xfinity Series races at the Chicago Street Course. NASCAR said after the NASCAR Cup Series race had concluded, they'd be taking a look at two incidents. They'd be taking a look at the incidents between Joey Logano and Ross Chastain, where Austin Eric and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got into the back of Joey Logano, which pushed Logano into Ross Chastain, and then Ross Chastain kind of retaliated and got into Joey Logano, which according to what Joey Logano said, and clearly Mike Ford did confirm this, Joey Logano went to the NASCAR officials trying to find a way for Joey Logano to get some sort of penalty, and of course NASCAR was like, we'll take a look at it, but NASCAR of course is not handing a penalty out on that front. I think that's absolutely fair, and if it's Ross saying that and basically saying that in a conversation to try to get you upset, I really don't think NASCAR can penalize Ross Chastain for that situation and incident. So I think NASCAR made the right call on that front right there. Now the other one that I thought maybe NASCAR would take a little look at more was the Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace incident, where both drivers are kind of racing a little bit erratically, especially when you have a big pack racing behind you. Now don't get me wrong, I do like entertainment. That was pretty entertaining to watch, don't get me wrong. But when you look at that incident in situation, they're both not contending for a win at that point. They're both just running basically outside of the top 5. If they race each other fair and clean at that moment, they both are going to get really, really good finishes. And I get that Bubba's trying to hang on to a position on older tires with a lot of guys on fresh tires, like Kyle Busch, for example. Bowman was, of course, at a time on fresh tires, but they both kind of race like idiots out on the racetrack, running into each other, getting contact with each other, and I don't think they were really looking at the bigger picture at that point. Now, they were looking at one certain incident that happened where I think people thought that Alex Bowman, quote-unquote, right-reared Bubba Wallace. He didn't right-rear Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace kind of came up the track a little bit into Alex Bowman, and even Bubba and even Freddie Kraft and Denny even said it, that Bowman did nothing wrong in that situation. I mean, where is Alex Bowman going to go there? So NASCAR basically saw it and was like, okay, we're not going to penalize Alex Bowman for something that he really is not at fault with. He really didn't do anything over egregious and didn't do really anything wrong at that point. To me, though, I think that NASCAR at least is doing good here by not sending out a penalty. Because remember last year, after the incident with Bubba Wallace and Alex Bowman, where Bubba Wallace got a $75,000 fine, which I think that fine was really, really egregious on NASCAR's part. At least they didn't give him a points penalty for that last year. But I thought the fine that Bubba got was way too much for the incident that happened there. If he got like a $20,000 fine or $25,000 fine, I think that would have been fair. But Alex Bowman even advocated for Bubba not getting a penalty last year, and they still gave him a penalty, which I didn't understand that. But I'm glad to see that NASCAR is taking a laissez-faire approach on this situation. They're keeping their hands off on this one, and they're not giving penalties out for this situation and incident. I think that was the right call, and I think it was the justified call on NASCAR's end and on NASCAR's part. Glad to see NASCAR's not going overkill on this. I'm glad they made the right call when it comes to officiating that incident and situation. Good to see they made the right call and right decision on that front. In my honest opinion, I think they made the right call there. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. Now, after the Chicago Street Course race concluded, there began to be a lot of talks and a lot of conversations surrounding the future of the Chicago Street Course. We've talked about this quite a bit on the channel over the course of the last couple weeks because right now they're in the final year of the current contract for the Chicago Street Course, and many think that this could be the final year for the original run of the Chicago Street Course going forward. Now, they do have technically 2 extra years that they could extend on the contract for 2026 and 2027. And Mayor Brandon Johnson addressed these throughout the whole entire week by saying that there have been definitely, of course, conversations about a potential return in 2026. However, if they are going to come back in the 2026 season on the NASCAR schedule, they would definitely like to make concessions and move away from the 4th of July weekend. Now, obviously, of course, they do have a big fireworks show that kind of takes place during that time in July, and you have the police in the area that do get strained quite a bit. Yes, they do have a large police force, my understanding, in the Chicago area, but they also, of course, do have a lot of that strain that comes into play, and when you have a big event like the Chicago Street Course that comes into effect, you do have to kind of think about that at that point. There's also a lot of rumors and speculation right now that San Diego is likely going to be on the schedule next season, and San Diego, I think, will be on there. I know there's been no official announcement on that yet, but Jordan Bianchi mentioned that sometime before the end of this month, there very likely could be an announcement coming there, which I think that we are going to see a race at San Diego over Chicago. Again, going back to the point about Chicago, I think the Chicago Street Course has been very successful for the first 3 years. The problem is there are people in the Chicago area, like that one guy who wrote that snot piece over the Chicago Street Course event. Remember, this is the same guy who wrote that snot piece like 2 years ago, by the way, who put out that original point, not Adam Stern, but the one guy who wrote that original snot piece, I think it's Mike Greenberg, if I'm not mistaken, who wrote a big snot piece on the Chicago Street Course and saying they need to move on there. But I think that if they're going to continue, if they do go back to Chicago, I think there's just going to be a lot of hassle on exactly what date they want to go to, and I don't think NASCAR is going to want to play full concession on there. And Jordan Bianchi brought up this point. He basically said it's best to leave something on a really big high note, and I entirely agree with Jordan Bianchi there. I think that it was very successful for 3 years, and I think NASCAR is going to go to San Diego most likely next year for the street course. There also is a lot of talk and conversation about the future of Chicagoland. A NASCAR, if they are to leave that market, if they are to bring the street course to San Diego, NASCAR, I've heard, does not want to leave the Chicago market once again like they did for a couple of years. They felt like it was not the best decision to leave after they left the Chicago market in 2020 due to COVID and the pandemic at the time, and they want to stay in the Chicago market so they can at least be in 1 or 2 of the major markets, because if they're in the San Diego area, they're going to be in that Southern California market, which is the largest market in the U.S., and Chicago is one of the 2 or 3 biggest markets that you have in NASCAR currently at this moment right now, so they don't want to leave it, which is why I think Chicagoland Speedway is going to be on the NASCAR schedule next year. I just think that makes a ton of sense at this point. And Chicagoland Plus, I think is going to put on a really, really good show. I think the next-gen car races there phenomenally. Now, of course, there's a few keep-up things they have to do. According to what Jared mentioned, I think during the stream last night with the NASCAR Weekly podcast, I think he mentioned that he's heard that they've worked on the track quite a bit since the last time when Carson did that video, when he went to Chicagoland Speedway and did that video. He said that they've made a lot of moves on that to continue making that track look a little nicer and a little bit better. To me, though, I think about Chicagoland, and I really want to see Chicagoland again back on the schedule. I think Chicagoland is going to fit better with these next-gen cars, and I don't want to see 2 street course races on the schedule. I've said about this. Like, people are saying, let's have 2 street course races, like Ty Gibbs mentioned. I really don't think NASCAR can handle 2 street course races. I think you only need 1 street course on the schedule, because if you have 1 street course race on the schedule, you're going to get the uniqueness of that event. I think if you have 2 of those on the schedule, you're not going to have the uniqueness of it, and I think you're going to lose some of the uniqueness and kind of coolness of the street course race in general. So I really would definitely love to see Chicago street course down the road be part of like a rotation, for example, of different street course races. But NASCAR is also going to want to stay in the San Diego market for at least a couple years if they're going to continue doing that. So we'll see what happens in the future of the street course event. But I think as of right now, the Chicago street course will not be around next year, and I think we're going to be moving toward a different street course track in the 2025 NASCAR Cup season. We'll see what happens on that front, and we'll see what goes there. But I think this is the last year of the Chicago street course, at least for the foreseeable future. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bowman Gray. As it was officially announced and confirmed on Wednesday morning that NASCAR will officially return to Bowman Gray Stadium in 2026, as they will continue hosting the Cookout Clash once again in 2026. They have been confirmed the date. It will be February 1st of 2026. Of course, you know the Daytona 500 will take place on February 15th, and this is one of the few confirmed dates we have so far for the 2026 calendar. With Bowman Gray being confirmed, it will be that race. Then, of course, the Daytona 500 will take place on February 15th. Then the Southern 500 will take place on September 7th, which will be the opening of the playoffs once again. Then we also have gotten confirmation that Homestead will be the championship race in 2026. We are starting to finally see the schedule take shape for the 2026 season, and the schedule could be released at any given time over the course of the next couple months, though there are some negotiations going on when it comes to schedule for 2026 at this moment, like the uncertainty of Mexico. But let's get back to Bowman Gray and the Clash. There were rumors, of course, that potentially NASCAR could go overseas with the Clash for 2026, with rumors of them maybe going to Interlagos or Stadium for the 2026 year. But that deal fell through, and NASCAR will be part of that. Now, it was noted in an article by Jordan Bianchi as well that it sounds like they're working on a 5-year deal currently at the moment in the Winston-Salem area. We talked about this report a couple weeks back, that they are very close to signing a 5-year contract for at least there being one national event in NASCAR's top 3 series, meaning that there will either be the Busch Clash for the next year or so, the Xfinity Series race at the track, or Truck Series race at the track going forward. Didn't just say one, it could be multiple events down the road into the future. But speaking of Bowman Gray, when it was announced it was going to be on the schedule for 2025, I was a little bit a little bit skeptical of the event because I've heard the history of Bowman Gray, right? We've seen a lot of the chaos from Bowman Gray, and we've seen a lot of the madness that takes place at the Madhouse every time they go there. But I gotta say, I was very impressed, number one, with the racing at the track. The racing quality actually was really good. For short track racing in particular, you got a really solid and really fun event. Sure, you had a lot of chaos in the event, and that's what you expect when it comes to race on a quarter-mile bull ring, for example. But you had a very exciting and really fun event, and I think the fans really got into it, except Fox's coverage wasn't that great. But from people that went to the track, they really enjoyed the event, and they had a lot of fun, and really would love to see the event back once again, which they are going to be getting. Now, the question I have is, we go toward that 5-year plan going forward into the future, could this event get moved around and Bowman Gray stay on the schedule, let's say for maybe, I don't know, an all-star race, for example? Maybe then you could get the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series there as well. Because my question is I don't know if they can fit 40 Xfinity cars or 38 Xfinity cars on the track at once. And they probably could fit 32 trucks, and they only get 30 or 32 trucks on the track. They probably can fit that, but they would probably have to have some sort of league exhibition thing like they did back then, where they did the heat qualifiers back in 2016, where they determined a small number of drivers in the field. And if you didn't make the main field, you get compensated with a few extra points. I'm not sure on that front, but that's the interesting thing with this report, right? Is that basically they're talking about having a 5-year deal. I think an all-star race weekend at the track would absolutely be really, really exciting. Now, going back to the future of the Clash, for example, and the future of Bowman Gray and the future of that, I think NASCAR down the road is going to move away from Bowman Gray into the future. There again, I think it depends on if they go to Brazil, like there's been talk about it. I think there is a very good chance and a strong possibility NASCAR is going to potentially go to Brazil as early as 2027 or 2028 on the international front, though there is a lot of talk NASCAR is also looking to go into Canada in the next couple of years. And I remember a report earlier this year that they were talking about going to Montreal for the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the Craftsman Truck Series. I'm not sure what the future of that deal is currently at the moment right now. And if Mexico doesn't come on the schedule, does NASCAR go up to Canada next year? Because NASCAR does want to have an international date. I think stadium racing, though, is certainly very interesting. There's also been a report out there as well about Philadelphia. Potentially, they're interested a little bit as well. I believe the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, talked about it, which, by the way, would not affect the Pocono weekend. So I have to think that'd be some sort of all-star event or Clash event in the future, though I would say it'd probably be really cold if they were to host a event like the Clash, for example, with how cold Philadelphia and Pennsylvania can get during that particular point of the season. In general, though, I think it's just really nice to see that Bowman Gray is back on the schedule. Again, I think the racing this year was really, really strong and really fun to watch. And I think the fans really got into it and had a lot of fun with it. That's the most important thing. The fans, they really had fun. And I think the fans really enjoyed it. Yes, maybe you're not going to get as much attendance as this, like at Daytona, for example. And everyone talks about, let's bring the Clash back to Daytona. Well, no one showed up the last couple of years. Let's be real and honest. In the last year in 2021, outside of a really wild finish, Tim, name me another memorable event that happened from the Clash in 2021, except the finish happened where Kyle Busch came in and swooped the win after Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott took each other out. Let's be real and honest. that wasn't the most exciting race in general. I mean, trivia question would be if Ty Dillon was the first one that drove the 23 car for 23-11. But at this moment, I just think that if we're going to do it, it has to be memorable. And I think we had a memorable year with Bowman Gray. So excited to see the Bowman Gray. We'll be back on the schedule in 2026. And we'll see what the future of the Clash can be. But good to see we'll be back on the schedule next year. So, that is going to today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What are your thoughts about Bowman Gray returning to NASCAR next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about the future of Chicago? Do you think it will return next year or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In a couple hours from now, we're going to see the second NASCAR news video dropping on the channel discussing all the other news I didn't discuss in the first video. You're also likely going to see reactions to Xfinity Series qualifying as well. And then, of course, you will also tomorrow be seeing reactions to Cup qualifying and the Xfinity Series race. Then Sunday, we'll have the starting lineup video for the Toyota State Mark 350 and the Cup review as well. The Monday, we should have a NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last couple days. And then on Tuesday, I should be doing maybe the intros for the upcoming race at Dover, but I might have something special coming out in the next couple days as well. We got content coming on people like Haley Deegan, Shane Ginsburg, and Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Ryan Preece, Connor Zills, Junior Motorsports, Carson Qualifiel, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Cleve Zafar, Dodge Ram, you name it, Frankie Muniz, all the good stuff. We'll talk about all that good stuff on the channel in the coming days and weeks, all along with Tony Breidinger. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.